And we're live. I'm super excited that you guys are joining me today. I am here with Doug Bryant, and he is the owner of Fish Window Cleaning in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And he is here today to help us dispel some myths about house cleaners cleaning windows, right? I get asked this question a lot from house cleaners who like, hey, let's just add in a little bit of extra, money by washing people's windows. And I do not want us to do that. Doug is going to tell us all the reasons why. So Doug, hello and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now I got to ask, how long have you been in the window business?
Just about 2.5 years now.
Okay. And how did you get into it?
Quite by accident. I spent 23 years before this in corporate America in the supply chain roles, various supply chain roles. And during COVID, I found myself looking for a new direction. And I always wanted to start my own business. I hadn't particularly looked for a window business, but I had gotten connected with a franchise consultant, and he started talking to me about franchises that might be right for me. And he introduced me to fish window cleaning. And it took me a few months to kind of get my head around it and get ready to, kind of make a leap like that. But really, the only regret I have is that I didn't do it sooner.
And why is that a regret?
I wish I could have done this. I wish I started this, 10 years ago, maybe even more. I think I was ready to do something like this back then, but it was kind of easy and comfortable in the corporate world, and they took care of a lot of things like your benefits and your 401k. It was out of sight, out of mind. It was really easy and it was comfortable, and so I kind of resisted that. But I wish I had done it sooner.
Well, I'm really glad you're in the window business now, because there are a lot of house cleaners that we want to know more about the window cleaning, and we want to know more about how to recommend window cleaners. And so we're hoping to get a lot of our questions answered today. And I want to say hi to our buddies here. Chris says, hi, question. Chris, go ahead and ask your question. We're here today to answer them. Rachel says, hi from England. Thank you for another live. Hi all the way across the pond. We're glad that you're joining us today. So and here's Chris's question. This is awesome. He said, I have a small landscape and janitorial business, but I have had to get a job because no one wants to pay $25 per hour and I have no employees, just me. Any suggestions? Yes, actually, this is a fantastic question. And I want to answer this question after this show, when I can actually spend more time on how to hire and talk about that issue. And so I will answer that in the questions below, because today, while we've got Doug on the line, I really want to talk about windows. So I'm super excited to know about windows, because I know as house cleaners, we carry vacuums in our cars. We don't drive trucks. We don't have truck mounts. We don't have ladders. We don't have two-story anything. So tell us what it costs and what is involved about running a window cleaning business, because we kind of don't know.
Sure. Well, for residential, we'll use a lot of the same tools that we use on the commercial side, but on the outside of residential, especially for second, third stories, a lot of times we use what's called a water-fed pole system, which is purified water that we run up a pole and brush the windows clean. So that keeps us from having to get up on ladders. Also saves us a lot of time from moving the ladders around the house and climbing up and climbing down. So it's a safety thing, and it's also a time saver. So that's a big tool that we use that is not really commercially available. You can't buy that at Lowe's or Home Depot or anything like that. It's a specialty item. So that's one of the tools that we use that generally you're not going to have available to you.
And I'm assuming to get the water up the pole, it's like a pressure washer kind of thing, right?
Sort of. It's in the same vein. There's several filters that the water runs through we'll hook up to your water source at your house, and it'll purify the water running through 3 different filters, and then through a small tube, it will run that water up the pole to the head of the brush that we use on the window. So it cleans the window without soap. But it does so with purified water, so it doesn't leave spots.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, do you have to be pretty strong to be able to hold those poles?
It can get tiring. You don't have to be a weightlifter or anything like that. But if you're doing it all day, it does get rather tiring. And you build up your traps and your and your your triceps and things like that doing it, but anyone can do it.
So my question is, how, as a house cleaner, how do you know when it's time to wash your windows?
It's really a personal preference question. Our busiest time for residential each year, we're in the South, so we get this just covering of pollen every spring, and it lasts for 2 or 3 months. So as that starts to die down in May or late May, early June, that's our busiest season because people want that pollen off their windows. The other busy season, as far as residential, busier season, I should say, is right before the holidays, which is right now, when people are getting ready to decorate. They want to put lights and all things on their house and their windows, wreaths, all those things. So they want their windows clean for that. Those are the two busiest times, but we stay pretty busy with residential throughout the year.
So if a homeowner was going to have their windows washed, let's say they were going to do a move in, move out cleaning, and the house cleaner was going to come in to clean, we already know that by having the windows clean, it makes the house look a whole lot cleaner. Do you have the windows clean then before they do that clean, or do you have them do the windows after that clean?
It really shouldn't matter for a move in or move out. It shouldn't matter whether we do them before or after.
Okay.
Either is fine.
And so if you were going to get involved in the house cleaning or the window cleaning business, are there certain training classes or certain things that you have to learn that are maybe specific to your industry?
Nothing that you can't learn on, doing a little digging on YouTube or anything like that. Fish is a franchise, so we have our own training program. Our main office based in St. Louis does a lot of training for us, but it's not terribly different from what you would find on if you did a Google search or some YouTube digging, you would find some basic techniques for how to clean windows. And there's all kinds of opinions out there as to what's the best and what doesn't work. And some of that is personal preference, but a lot of it is just experience. The more experienced you get, the more you'll understand what works for you and what doesn't.
And I'm guessing experience with that training, because you can do experience with like Windex and a paper towel all day. And that may not be the right experience that you're trying to perfect.
That's really lesson number one, is like, get rid of that stuff, and use professional equipment, mops and squeegees, not Windex and paper towel or newspaper or whatever, we've always heard that you should use.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the resorting to window cleaning that way is because there isn't a proper technique that is taught to house cleaners, number one. Number two, because we don't have the special wands with the purified water filters in it. We don't have some of the tools. And I know that some of the insurance is different. If you are expected to get on a 2-story ladder, the insurance is very different than if you are inside someone's house standing flat-footed and you're just moving a mop or a vacuum. And so what are some of the differences that we have to look at as far as if someone were going to go into the window cleaning business?
Well, one is we try to stay off ladders wherever possible. If we don't have, that's one of the reasons the water-fed pole system is great. That keeps us, at least on the outside. We can't use it on the inside because of the water, but on the outside, it keeps us off ladders. We use extension poles. So we will put and it's hard to describe here, but we have hand mops that fit onto an extension pole, and that pole will go up 12 feet or so, depending on what pole you're using. So we try to clean from the ground wherever possible. The more practice you get with that, the better you get. So in terms of safety, we try to do everything we can to stay off ladders. That's not always possible. Sometimes on residential, you'll have these indoors, you'll have these high foyers with windows that you just can't get from the ground. Even though your extension pole might reach it, you just can't get a good angle on it, and you have to get up there with a ladder. So there are times we do that, but we use the only thing we use are OSHA approved equipment. We don't use anything that's homemade or anything like that. We follow all the safety rules. We have someone spotting or holding the ladder for someone else to go up. So people aren't doing this by themselves. That's a big reason people get hurt trying to move ladders and go up and down by themselves and no one's watching. So we try to do all those things we can, even if we have to go on ladders for safety. And that also helps in a lot of ways with the insurance. Now, I don't know the specifics of what's the difference between the insurance cost for when you do and don't get on ladders. I know the insurance is expensive. It's very expensive for us, but and we try to keep track of how much time we spend going up ladders on individual jobs. That gives our insurance company an idea every year of how much we're putting ourselves at risk, I suppose.
Does that change the cost of your insurance based on spending more time on ladders versus not as much time?
It would, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we have in our system, when we enter a job, we can put, how much time during that job we're going to spend on ladders. And we try to keep track of that so that we're honest about what we're doing and what we're, the safety protocols and things like that. So our insurance takes that information every year, recalculates it, and gives us a new price. But like I said, we just try to keep that at a minimum wherever possible.
And is that factored into your workers' comp as well, or is that something a different, like a general liability policy?
I'm not quite sure. I don't want to say yes or no on that one because I'm not sure whether it covers which one it's covered under or whether it applies to both. But the total price does fluctuate based on how much we are using ladders.
Speaking of ladders, I think maybe I know that our society kind of likes the if it leads, if it bleeds, it leads kind of a thing. And I'm curious to know, in some of your training, have you heard any stories of people that have either fallen off ladders or that they've had accidents because they weren't following the OSHA standards or they weren't being careful?
Yeah, we've heard stories. I mean, nothing has ever happened within our business. We're very careful. Most of the other fish franchisees are, take well, I shouldn't say most. They all take it very seriously. We've heard of things happening where someone will be kind of walking along a roof line and no one is spotting them, no one's watching and warning them, and they're just going about their business cleaning, and they don't realize how close they are to an edge, and they'll step off. So things like that have happened. But again, it's really just about training your people, making sure they're aware of those risks, making sure that no one does this stuff alone. Someone's always watching and spotting and giving warnings and things like that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I love the fact that you guys are so careful, because you can't run a business if somebody's in the hospital with a broken back.
Right.
I mean, you just can't. And like you said, there are certain times you can't use your magic wand. I'm going to call it the magic wand, the filter system, because inside many of the homes, especially where I live, they do have the 2-story great rooms, or they have the 2-story entryway windows. And then in order to get up there, it's very tall up there, like 12, 15 feet up there. And in order to, like you said, get a good grip or a good angle, you got to do something fantastic up there to make sure that it's clean. Otherwise, you see the spots from all the different angles in the room as you walk by. Yes. So how do you bid for that? I mean, I'm guessing you have to do a walkthrough on the job, right?
We typically, we do have to walk around. Usually we're only walking around the outside of the house to price it. If there's anything special about the inside that the homeowner is asking for, we'll go inside. But a lot of times we're going from one place to the next, doing estimates throughout the day or throughout the week. So we will typically just kind of walk around the outside and we can get a really good idea of what we're dealing with. Now, doing that has its pros and cons, because sometimes you don't realize, you look up at a window and you give it a price, and then you don't realize that, oh, on the inside, there's no second floor there. So you have to get up on a ladder. So you have to be careful about pricing things by just walking around the outside of the house. But we do our best to try to take into account. And the more you do this, the better you get at it.
So just like in the house cleaning business, we like to recommend window cleaners because we don't clean windows ourselves. And the exception to that would be a glass sliding door that would take you from like the kitchen outside to the patio, for example. I know in Florida, we have lots of those. Like a home will have 3 sets of those, one coming out from the primary bedroom, one from the living room, and one from the kitchen.
Sure.
And that's, you know, kind of an exception to the rule. But if you can stand flat footed and it's right there where the dog brushes his nose up against the window and you get all the smudges, we will clean that. But other than that, we don't do windows. Do you, as a window cleaner, also recommend other services, not house cleaning services, but let's say like a window company that could replace a broken thermal seal or something like that?
From time to time, if we have a company that we're aware of, that we trust, and we know their reputation, or we've worked with them before, we will recommend various other services that we don't perform ourselves. I was just asked yesterday about someone that, can you repair my screens if they have holes? No, we can't. That's not something we do. And honestly, I don't know a company. I'm not aware of a company personally that does that. I know they're around, but I couldn't recommend anyone because I've never worked with anyone like that. So.
Well, and that's a fair question. I know that somebody came to my house today to do a service, but because he has very tall ladders that go up, my first question was, oh, there's someone with a ladder. If they're skilled and they're comfortable on a ladder and they're insured for a ladder, could they replace that shutter that fell down in the last storm or whatever?
Yes.
And so,
yes. I mean, we've done some things like that, as long as we feel qualified to do it. Just like the situation you just mentioned, all the time when we're cleaning a second story, an open foyer or something like that, if they have a chandelier with bulbs out, if they have the bulbs, we'll change them while we're up there. If there's a ledge there that gets a lot of dust and they can't get to it, we'll dust it off before we clean the window. Things like that, little things. If we're qualified, if we feel qualified and safe to do it, we'll do things like that. But I'd rather recommend a professional for something more technical. We have a business here in our little business park that does window tinting. That's their business. And I know their work. I feel very comfortable recommending them to people. So when they ask me, do you know anyone that tints windows? Absolutely, call these people. But if I'm aware, I'll do that.
Well, tell me about the window tinting, because I know when we moved to the house that we're in, the way that the sun rises in the morning, we've got a whole row of windows. We didn't want it to discolor the hardwood floors. And so we had all of those inside windows tinted so that it would shade the flooring from being discolored or whatever, just for resale value on the home.
Right.
So does it change, or does it affect the window cleaning when you clean a window that has that tinting on it?
It can, yes, it can be very, we have to be very careful when there's a window tint. If it's a film, a window tint film that's applied to the window, you can actually buy tinted windows. That's a different story. But
this was the film that they put on.
Yes. So that's more common and probably less expensive, I would imagine. If it has a film on it, the actual cleaning is the same. We don't do anything different. However, once in a while, we will use, if there's a spot that needs to be buffed out, we'll use a product. Like typically we clean with soap and water, but if there is something that's really hard to get at, you have some adhesive or something like that, we have some products that will get that off. And if it's a spot that's just not coming out with a regular microfiber towel or whatever towel we're using, we will sometimes use a very fine steel wool to buff that out. Doing that on a film chemicals will eat through it, and the very fine steel wool, even though it won't scratch windows, it will scratch the tint. So we have to be very careful about not using things like that on a window with tint. So we just have to be very aware whether or not there's a tint on it, because if you get to cleaning other windows and you don't realize there's a tint there, you can ruin, you're not going to ruin the window, but you can ruin the film and have to pay to replace that. So we don't want to do that either.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think every industry has its don't do this moments, right? Where there are little things that you kind of learn by trial and error. And from where I sit, I get hundreds of calls a week of people that are like, I used steel wool on something they shouldn't have. and it either scratched something or they used a pumice stone on something that they shouldn't have used it on or whatever, thinking, oh, it worked really well on this one surface, it might work really well on another. And all surfaces are not equal. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it is the reason why, as professionals and home service providers, that we are insured in case there's an accident and for some reason we goofed.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you mentioned something a minute ago that caught my attention about the chemicals that you use. And you said you use soap and water. And I'm guessing that's one of the reasons why when you're outside and you use the pole that has the filtering system, that I would imagine that would be safer than spraying chemicals up there on the windows that then could backfire and come out on your plants and other things. So tell me about that.
Yes. So, and we don't use these things a lot. This is just, very specialized situations. When there's an adhesive stuck, maybe you put up some Christmas lights or something, and you put some tape on the windows to hold them there or whatever. If that adhesive we're having trouble getting it off with soap and water, we have an adhesive remover that we'll use. It's very hard on your hands and your skin, so we use gloves when we do use it. We're very careful about those things. Also, when we do, we'll talk, I'm sure at some point we'll talk about hard water stains or mineral deposits. That's something that we will use. It's a different cleaning process than just soap and water. Those spots will not come off with soap and water. It takes something a little more heavy duty, and there's a cream that we use on that. And that's actually something that it takes a lot of elbow grease to get it out, even with those products. So we actually bring in an electric buffer and just buff the window with it, so to get that out.
I'm imagining that has to be done on a ladder or a lift of some sort, because you can't do that from a pole.
It's typically, you don't really see that a lot on the higher end, and I don't know if that's true across the board, but we mostly see it on lower windows. And one of the main reasons we do see it is because the homeowner has a sprinkler system, and that sprinkler system is probably using well water, and that water is either hitting the windows directly or it's splashing onto the windows. Over time, that will build up, and if you're not cleaning your windows regularly, it'll get to the point where you have to go to that extra step of using harder chemicals. It takes a lot more time. It's a lot more expensive. So it does happen.
So are there a lot of areas that have hard water that really need that service that you're offering?
We see it a lot. We do. Like I say, I think the biggest culprit that I see is sprinkler systems. It can be caused by rain too. And that, I don't know the specifics of what causes it, chemically or anything like that. But when it does happen, if you keep the windows clean regularly, it doesn't stain, doesn't stick to the windows. But if you don't, and especially if you got a sprinkler system that every day is hitting those windows, over time, it's going to be hard to get off. So there's things that you can do to avoid it, but there are areas where we see it and there's nothing they could have done. It's just the area they live in.
As I travel, I've seen some windows that I'm like, oh no, I wouldn't want to clean those. Those are like terrible with the hard water stains and so discolored that it looks like it really devalues the outside of the home. Yes.
And we've, I try to point that out when we're doing the estimate before we even come to the house to clean. I try to make it a point to point that out to the homeowner. Listen, we're going to clean with soap and water. It's not going to get this out. If you want this out, we can do it, but that's a different job on a different day and a different cost. And we can talk about that, but it's just so you know, because when we don't make that clear up front, we'll clean the windows. It doesn't come off, and the homeowner's not happy because they expected that to come off.
So what I hear you saying is setting realistic expectations is a key element in customer satisfaction.
Absolutely. If there's something that you're not going to be able to get, or it might not look great when you're done with it, we always try to point that out just to make sure that, listen, this is the job we're doing. versus, what you might be expecting. And if you don't want to hire us, that's absolutely fine. We just want to make it clear that we're not going to be able to get that off with the price point we've quoted you.
And so, is there a better time of the day to have your windows clean, like morning versus the evening, or hot sun, no sun?
Well, there's differing opinions. I think generally you don't want to do it on hot sunny days. Doing it in the sun is not bad. I think you'll see out there people will say don't clean your windows on a sunny day. I don't necessarily agree with that, but when the sun is beating directly on a window, our solution is just soap and water. But if we're not quick, but by the time we soap up the window and get our squeegee to clean it off, it's already drying and it can leave streaks. So it can be very difficult to clean on a hot sunny day especially when the sun's beating on a window. Other people say overcast is the best time to do it. I don't necessarily disagree, but my one complaint with overcast days is when you're looking through the window and trying to get it clean, you don't have a contrast. You don't see that contrast from the sun. So it will look clean to you, but the next day when the sun comes out, you might notice that you missed a spot or you have a streak or a drip or something like that you couldn't see when it was overcast. So that's the only, I guess, downside to cleaning on overcast days. Temperature wise, I would say ideal conditions are 60s or 70s. We live in the South. In the summer it gets, well into the 90s regularly. We try to get as much as we can done in the morning.
Hi, we'll be there at 5 a.m.
Right. It's not, well, that's the thing. You can't clean windows in the dark. So we can only start so early. But we just do the best we can. When there is windows we're cleaning that are, the sun's beating on them and it's hot, we just use a little less soap, a little more water, and we just try to be as quick as we can to get that done before it streaks. So it's not an easy answer to that question. And everybody has their own opinion, but ideal conditions, I would say somewhat sunny, 60 to 70 degrees.
A day like today.
Yeah.
There you go. So what about weather? I mean, I hate to say, but this sounds like a really weather related business. If it's raining and pouring outside, you probably can't go out and start washing windows.
Sometimes true. I mean, our business, for fish window cleaning, we really focus on commercial cleaning. So we do more businesses than residential. And I know we're talking more residential here, but on the commercial side, many of the businesses we clean have awnings over their windows. So if it's a shopping center, a strip mall, something like that, typically they have an awning over each window. And in that case, as long as there's no lightning or thunder, we can clean, throughout. If they don't, we can clean the inside and come back when it dries up and clean the outside. So we have ways of working around it. Residential is a little tougher, I'll admit, because you typically don't have awnings over the windows. So you have to try to either get the inside while it's raining and hopefully it stops raining. You can do the outside, or come back another day or later in the afternoon or something like that. So we do have issues. Now, I feel like we're lucky in the South. We get a lot more sun and a lot less rain. We don't deal with snow. So I think there's, if you were to have this conversation with somebody in Wisconsin, you would get some different answers. But I think we're lucky in that respect. But we try to work around the weather as much as possible. And like I said, we don't, anytime there's any hint of thunder, lightning, or anything like that, we're not out there. But if it's just raining and we can get under an awning, we'll do it.
Well, and that is a curiosity because there is the whole eastern seaboard in the United States that has just brutal winters. Mm-hmm. And so there's lots and lots of snow. And I can imagine that there are periods of time where there's no window washing at all during the winter time when it's, 0 degrees outside and, 3 feet of snow or 5 feet of snow. And, then what? And I can only imagine just by the salt that's in the air and the stuff that gets spewed around, how dirty and salty and sandy the windows must get just from the evaporation of water in the air, and then when it rains, it comes back down. I can only imagine it must be a mess. If anybody here has questions or comments, and you're from the Eastern Seaboard, tell us what you do, because I'm curious. We have Eunice Williams here, who made some fun comments. She said, "Happy Friday. My husband and I own a cleaning business, and we only do windows ourselves that open up, where we can clean them from the inside. And we also been clean from the outside, warm the inside." And I'm guessing those are the windows that you pull down the window pieces and you clean the insides and then put them back up. And I've done that as well, but only what I can reach and inside my own house. But for a professional job, we find somebody like Doug here to help us. She said, also, if we ever do any other types of windows, rather is residential or commercial, we would subcontract that work. And I think I'm in the same situation, because and Eunice says, yes, I live in Wisconsin. I know what he's talking about. Oh, wow. Check it out. So you're actually from Wisconsin. So those are some tough areas, I would imagine.
Yes. I mean, we, other fish franchisees up in the north, they do clean throughout the winter. I think it's safe to say residential drops off quite a bit during the winter. But they still very much clean a lot of the commercial accounts through the winter. That's what kind of feeds them until the residential comes back around in the spring. And they also use some solutions in their cleaning mix, like your windshield washing fluid type material that will keep the water from freezing, and that allows them to continue cleaning. Now, they still have to have access to the window. So if there's 4 feet of snow, there's not much they can do. But if they can reach a window, they'll still clean it in the winter.
Wow, that's really interesting. There's a lot of stuff here to think about that I haven't really dug into. So that's interesting. What is the main difference between residential and commercial when it comes to cleaning techniques?
I think the technique of actually cleaning a window is generally the same. We're going to clean both windows the same. I think the major differences are, one, time, because a residence is there's a lot of things that you have to kind of consider that you don't have to on commercial. Commercial goes very fast. We're in and out of fast food storefronts, things like that. We clean both sides of the windows and move on to the next business. On residential, you're going to spend on a decent sized house. I don't know square footage wise what's average, but we typically spend 2 to 4 hours on a house. And that time includes, we're going to come in first. Before we can do anything, we have to take your screens off if you have screens. So we take those out, we clean the screens inside and out, we clean around the frame of the screen. We also raise you were talking about double hung windows earlier that you raise up and tilt in. We'll raise those up and we'll clean out all of the gunk, for lack of a better term, out of the tracks. And then we'll set the screens aside, close the windows, go back outside and clean the outside. After that's finished, we'll come back in, clean the inside, put the screens back in. So there could potentially be some furniture or things like that we need to move back and forth. So there's a lot of time involved in all that. And there's a higher level of scrutiny. As you can imagine, this is someone's home. It's sentimental. You have to be very careful. It's not like you're in a business and you knock something over and it breaks. Okay, fine. They just replace it and you pay for it. But not that happens a lot. But you knock something off that's sentimental or they can't replace. So you have to be very careful. So that takes time. And so the major differences, I should say, between commercial and residential is time. And then like I said, you have other obstacles, not obstacles, I shouldn't say that, but you have the screens and the tracks and the sills you have to wipe down, and moving furniture back and forth sometimes. So those things take time.
So from a house cleaner's perspective, I'm super curious, how do you guys clean those window seals? Because I know for us, and we do them on a move in, move out clean. We don't clean the windows, but we do clean the window sills and the tracks. And so we have to raise the windows and we have to vacuum out all the gobbledygook. And then we have to spray them. And we got these little tiny OXO deep cleaning brushes where we brush both sides of the little ledges and what have you. And then there's a little, I don't know, like a little rubber spatula end of one of the OXO deep cleaning brushes that's not going to scratch the window panes. And we can like wrap a paper towel around that and just go in and clean up all the gunk. How do you guys do it?
Well, I think it's safe to say we're probably not as detailed as all that. We will raise the windows and we typically use some type of brush. We actually use a lot of these little, you ever seen the little brush that the umpire uses to sweep off the plate?
Oh yeah.
We have those in our bags and we'll use those to brush out any loose dirt or debris there. So we'll get as much of that as we can out. And then we will use wet towels that we have dipped in our soap solution, and we'll wring them out and then use those to just get in the cracks and little crevices and clean what we can out. So we're not getting Q-tips and getting into every tiny corner, but we get, basically it's going to look a lot better than it did. If there's any mold, we get that off. So the technique is probably not as detailed as what you just described, but we get most of it out, so that the homeowners can see a major difference and it is clean.
So you mentioned obstacles a minute ago, and right now it is the first week of November. And I know it's true in my house, there's a double pane window and then there's a screen. And between the window and the screen, there are spider webs. And the spider webs have come and made their homes, I don't know, trying to get inside, or it's just warmer, or it's, I don't know what, but they're all spider webs. And like, we did not plan this for Halloween. They just kind of like appeared, right? So tell me about like the spider webs and stuff. How do you guys clear out spider webs when you're taking those screens off? And
yeah, we just we have what we call a cobweb duster, and it's just a little round brush, and then we just kind of clean all the cobwebs we can see, get up in the corners and kind of spin it a little bit. It'll kind of get rid of all the little crevices, all the little things up there, like, whether it's a spider web or just debris from the winter or whatever. But we just clean them off, and then we'll continue to do the tracks and stills, and so we deal with a lot of that.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. You can't be afraid of spiders and do this job, I don't think.
What are some of the costs that a homeowner needs to take into consideration when they're trying to justify the price of window cleaning?
Well, I think, we hear it both on the commercial and residential side. We have customers or potential customers that say, I'll just clean it myself. Look, you can save money that way. You can save money. You won't have to pay us. But in the long run, we have the right tools. We have the right training. We do it in a third of the time that it will take you to do it. So it's a trade-off. You have to kind of look at, is it really worth me, especially if you're getting up on ladders? Is it really worth me risking my health to try to do this versus, and we're not that expensive. So I think in general, there's if you have the right tools and the training, more power to you. But what I generally will tell people is, in the long run, you're going to save money and maybe even your health by letting us do it for you once or twice a year on the residential side.
So in my personal opinion, and this is based on 30 years in the house cleaning industry, there comes a certain window where I recommend homeowners not climb on ladders anymore. I'm like, okay, I love the fact that you want to try, and I don't think it's a good idea based on everything I'm seeing.
Right.
And so at what point would you recommend that a homeowner who's always been a do-it-yourselfer kind of switch gears and say, hey, you know what? I'm now at that fun age where I think it is wiser for me to actually outsource this to a company.
I don't know that there's a magic age, but I think, for me, it's, I think you get to a point in life where you have the disposable income to pay for it, versus when you're younger, you might not have that. And you just kind of suck it up and do it yourself. But I think, generally as you get older, it's riskier. So you have to take that into consideration. It's not worth your health. No window getting clean is worth your health. So, especially if you haven't done it before, it looks simple from the ground. It always does. But when you get up on a ladder and you're up, 20, 30 feet, it's not as simple as it looks sometimes. So, I would recommend, if you are at an age or at a station in life where you can pay to have it done, please do it. It's something, it's one of those things that you might save a couple bucks, overall, but it's not worth the risk.
We're headed into the holidays, and there are a lot of people, I know myself included. I always get trapped trying to find something for parents that are a good gift for the holidays. That is not something that's just going to clutter their home. And I think window cleaning is a great gift because it's something that they're going to need a couple of times a year. Tell me about packages that you guys might sell that would be a great gift that somebody could be thinking about getting for like the holidays for their parents or,
Yes.
an elder sibling or somebody that can't
Sure.
get on ladders.
Sure. Well, we offer gift certificates in any amount. So you could just contribute X amount towards a window cleaning. That's the easiest way. If you want an exact price of what it's going to cost for that house, the only difficulty is we got to get out there and walk around without them knowing. So that might be difficult, but if you can get them away from the house long enough for us to go look at it and price it, you can buy a gift certificate for that exact amount. But yes, great gift, great idea. I would love, we don't see a lot of that, we haven't seen a lot of that in the last couple of years, but we'd love to do more of it as far as gift certificates and things like that. I think it's a great gift, especially if you have those parents that really do it, like mine. They love to try to do those things themselves, and they're getting older, and a lot of times nothing happens, but there's that one time that it could. So
Well, and my parents are at that age. And so I have to start thinking in terms of what are they trying to do that I don't want them to do.
Yep.
And I know that they live on a farm and they have orchards and things. And like my dad will go out and try to pick apples and things like that. So I'm always thinking, okay, this is a ladder activity. Can we send somebody in to wash the windows? Can we send somebody in to go pick the apples from the trees? Can we pay somebody to go stack firewood up against the side of their house so that they have it for the winter? And are there things like that maybe they brush the snow off the roof in the winter so that he doesn't try to get on a ladder, try to climb on his house? Because I just don't want him up there anymore. And so, and you just brought up a really good point. Can we get somebody away long enough that we can go do a walkthrough? And we live in a neighborhood where you cannot. All the neighbors will go, oh, there's a strange company that's like wandering around your house, and they'll text the people and whatever. So what's the best way to do this? Do we say, listen, mom, dad, I want to get you window cleaning for Christmas, and I don't know how much it's going to cost, and I don't want to shortchange you on the gift. Can I have the company come out and give us a price and an estimate and then set a date? And would you be cool if somebody comes wandering around your house to do that? Is that the best way to do that?
Well, that's certainly that's fine. That works well. What you can also do a lot of times, if you can get me good pictures of each side of the house where I can see all of the windows in pictures, sometimes I can price it without going out there. So that's another possibility. If you can figure out how to get pictures without somebody getting too nosy or asking about why you're out there taking pictures. So that's another way you can potentially do it. But you could also, we can take a guess before we come out there and say, send us a picture of the front of the house, and we can take maybe even the front and the back, and we can take a rough guess and say, okay, we think it's going to cost roughly this. If you want to get the gift certificate for that, and then we can adjust at the time of service if you need to. So that's another way we can do it. We certainly don't want to get the police called on us walking around people's yards. I always ask when someone calls me for an estimate, and I say, hey, is it okay if I come by? If you're not there, I just want to walk around the outside. Do I have your permission to walk in the backyard? And I always make sure that no one's going to be calling the cops on me, but it hasn't happened yet, but you never know.
Well, and it's weird because like today, a neighbor texted me and said, there's somebody wandering around in your bushes. That this thing happened this very day. And I was like, that's weird. And
Mhm.
it was only weird because we don't normally have people wandering around in our bushes. So that
Right.
was weird. So then I texted my husband and I said, is there any reason somebody should be wandering around in our bushes? And he said, yes, I hired a guy to come fix the outdoor lighting. And I was like, oh, okay, it's cool, right? But because then I knew, I was like, oh, I got nosy neighbors. I've got those nosy neighbors. Like
Mhm.
they're my neighbors. Those are the people that are going to call the cops on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I've said that I haven't had the cops called on me, but I have had nosy neighbors come over and say, "What are you doing here?"
yeah,
And I kind of like, I don't know whether I should say. It's not my business really to say, but I don't want the cops called. So a lot of times I'll say, "Listen, I'm doing an estimate. I've been asked to come here. Um, you're welcome to call the cops, but we."
do you have markings on your vehicles, like a sign or something that says we're fish window cleaning, and so that
We
it's
do we have that on our cleaning vehicles. So when
uh-huh.
somebody's out cleaning, our vehicles are logoed and everybody can see who we are. My personal vehicle though is not, and sometimes I'm out there doing estimates in my personal vehicle. So I always wear, our gear, our logo and our colors, but my vehicle does not have um, any markings on it. So there has been times when people are like, "Why are you here?" I'm quick to show them, like, "Look, here's my I'm from Fish Window Cleaning. Here's my stuff." And like I said, I haven't been in trouble yet, but I always try to cover my bases and make sure that if someone knows I'm going to be walking around their backyard, I don't just usually stop by and do it without their permission.
There you go. Okay, cool. We've got a question here. Mary says, I have double pane windows with fog between the panes and they look awful. Is there anything I can do about that? And then she says, I rent.
No, I think that's so. The short answer is no. When that happens, you have a broken seal. Somewhere in the window, there's a broken seal. You cannot fix that without replacing the panes. If you're a renter, you can talk to your landlord, try to figure out if they will do something about it. But there's nothing we can do to get rid of that, aside from replacing the window or at least replacing the panes. And we don't do that ourselves. Yeah, I
And
see
that's a
them.
that's a common issue where the thermal seal is busted and it looks really foggy and it
Yeah,
looks awful.
yeah,
And it does have to be replaced, but
yes.
many of the window installers usually run about a 10 or a 15-year warranty on
I
their
was just going to
windows.
mention that. Absolutely. If your house is newer, especially within 10 years, figure out, and a lot of times when you raise the window on the screen or somewhere around the frame, there will be if you don't know who made the windows, you can find the name of the company on there. Call them. A lot of times, if it's been less than 10, maybe 15 years, they will come out and replace it for free. So that should be your first call. Try to get it done under warranty. But if it's older, there's really not much you can do except replace the window. And like I said, I see it every day. I have a couple on my house that are like that, and it's just I haven't really got to a point where I'm like it bothers me enough to have it done, but it does look awful.
And what Doug is talking about is if you'll raise the window, usually when you raise the window, there's a little tiny strip about like this on the
Mhm.
bottom of the window. And underneath there is usually a little sticker. And if you'll take your smartphone and slide it under there and take a picture of the little label, it will tell exactly the code that is needed for them to come out. And they know the sizing, they know the kind of window, they know all the details based on that little sticker that's there. And it's hiding. So you usually don't even know that it's there. But if you raise the window and you look underneath, it's usually a white or a gold label. So there you go. And that's what Doug is talking about. So
Yes, that's another thing that broken seals, we will point those out when we're doing estimates, just to say, listen, just be aware that's not going to go away when we clean it. So it's very, very important to make sure that they understand that, because a lot of homeowners just expect that it just needs a good cleaning, but that's not the case.
when a homeowner is thinking about having their windows cleaned, what are some of the preparation steps they can do leading up to having your company come out and clean the windows?
Mhm. Well, I guess the biggest thing for us is just move anything that's right up next to a window where we can't reach it. If you got a couch that's pulled up right against the window, we don't need a lot of space. You don't have to move it out 6 feet, but we only need about a foot of space just to get between there to stand and clean the window. That's the biggest thing is just if you have furniture that's blocking the windows or keeping us from getting to them, that's the biggest in terms of preparation. If you want to take your own screens out, that's great. We will do it for you. But if you want to take those out, and honestly, when we talk about screens, it's personal preference, but I recommend to whoever I can, if you're not using those windows, you're not opening and shutting those windows, take the screen out. You don't need it. The window looks much better without the screen. And we're taking it out and cleaning it and putting it back, and you're never raising that window. I know in my own house, I either have the air or the heat running all the time. So I keep a couple of screens and a couple of strategic windows in case I want to breeze. But if you keep every screen on every window, if you're not opening all those windows, there's some that you can probably take out. I will caution though, when you do that, especially on older houses, if you do that and take your screens out and you're going to store them, before you stack them up in a pile and put them in the garage or the attic or whatever, take some like painter's tape or something like that, or some masking tape on each screen, label which window it came out of. Because even though it's the same size screen, same size window as the one next to it, houses shift and settle as they get older. And if you take a screen out of one window and try to put it into the one next to it, it might not fit, even though it's the same size, because they get used, the wind, it kind of forms around the window that it's been in. So I would say if you're going to take those out and stack them up, great, but label them first in case you ever want to put them back, or you're selling your house and you want to put them back in there, or just tell the new homeowner which screen is which, because you can have a hard time putting that screen back in if you don't put it in the same window it came out of. Just a word of caution, but I always try to sort of recommend that if you're one of those people that when the spring comes, you just raise every window, and get air coming in, that's great. But if you're not, your windows look a lot better without the screen. So get them out of there.
That is an interesting tip. And I want to highlight something you just said. And it's really interesting. Doug said use painter's tape, and painter's tape really over duct tape or masking tape or anything else, because they will leave a residue on the window. Painter's tape won't. So do yourself this favor. Type or write the words, because you can just use a magic marker or like a Sharpie pen. Standing inside, left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4 windows. This is window number 1, and circle it. And then next on the next one, standing inside, left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is window number 2, and circle the 2. That way, oh, there are 4 windows. I know exactly what room I'm in. This is that standing inside, not outside, left to right. And then you'll know exactly what window it is. So I love that tip. What a great tip that is. Yay. Yeah. I'm so happy about that.
And look, here's another thing on the screens. Look, I'm sorry, but there's, when spring comes and you raise all those windows and you want to get the fresh air in, if you haven't cleaned those screens, you're bringing in as much pollen and all this stuff as you are, probably more of that than you're bringing in fresh air. So it's coming into your house. So if you're going to do that and you're going to leave the screens in, you're going to raise the windows in the spring, take those screens out during the winter and clean them, so that when you do that, you're gonna have less like gunk and stuff particles flowing into your house.
And one of the things that Doug is talking about, and I also live in the South, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is right up the street from where Doug is. So when Doug talks about pollen, let me tell you about pollen. So we have a bright neon yellow flyer that we leave when we clean people's homes in North Carolina for all during the spring, starting about in mid-February all the way through to about April. And it says, please close your windows for this reason. The pollen is like a yellow film, and it will come in through your windows. Because, I mean, it's so tempting to open the windows and get the fresh air coming in. And that pollen will come right in your windows, and it settles on all of your surfaces. And it's kind of a gunky, think of like a light honey feel, where you touch it and it just kind of sticks. And then it gets inside the keyboards of your computers, and it gets on your remote controls. It gets on your game consoles. If you have Stream Decks, I don't know what you have in your house, but all the little fine particles of whatever you have, like if you have fabric that has like a fine tapestry, oh, it just goes right inside there and it sits in all the crevices. If you have oil paintings, it like sticks on all the different textures. OMG, I'm telling you, do not let the pollen inside your house, right? Because when the house cleaner comes in, your price is going to double when they got to go through and try to remove all of that from your house. And like Doug is saying, and then you got to breathe it. And if you have ever had allergies, pollen is one of the biggest triggers. So while we're all about the fresh air, I'm telling you, put on a pair of walking shoes and get out the door and go out and go walking to get your fresh air, but do not let it inside your house, because it's going to wreck your windows and it's going to wreck all of the fine furnishings that you have in your house. And it's going to get stuck on your tapestries and your carpets and inside. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. Don't do it. Lynn says, I can't have a screen on a sliding door. She's in Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach, yes. And so questions on sliding doors. What do you recommend for sliding doors?
Really nothing different. I mean, there's nothing different that we do in terms of cleaning. Keep the frames clean. If you're opening it a lot, get those tracks. I would recommend this for not just sliding doors, but any windows in your home. Open them and close them once in a while, because if you don't, we've been in houses that they haven't opened the windows in years, and we try to open them and pieces pop off and the door, and they won't raise or lower. They get stuck. So they're made to open and close. Do that every once in a while. So even if you're not using it regularly, now granted, a sliding door you're probably going to use more often, but clean the tracks out of that, even while even when you're just daily use, every once in a while, just clean those tracks out. But in general, just open and close these things, because they're made to move. And if they don't, they'll get stuck.
What advice do you have for people that have older windows that have window panes in them and they're not double window panes with the panes on the inside?
No, there's nothing different in terms of cleaning. First of all, call us. But there's really nothing different in terms of how we clean it or how you care for it. New windows are super expensive, so stick with what you have if you can, and let us clean them. But no, there's really nothing different about how to maintain those.
Okay, cool. All right. As a professional house cleaner, I have been in people's homes that their windows were old enough that they have window panes. And as you start to clean them, some of the window panes just like chip off and erode. So in that situation, please call someone like Doug. Don't take the liability. Let Doug's company take it.
Yeah, sure.
Let them do it, because they do know windows. Okay. They've got little tricks and things that they know, and they have tools that they can use. And maybe, like he said, the brushes that they use, it's a lighter, gentler brush that's not going to damage stuff. So the reason as house cleaners we don't do windows is there are tiny nuances about the windows that are really best left to a company that does that all day, every day for a living. They know how to do it. And instead of us trying to just do everything for our homeowners because we want to help, there are other companies like Doug's company that specializes in a specific set of tasks that this is not an upsell project for us. This is actually something like carpet cleaning we don't do, and there are very good reasons why. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so this is the reason we want to meet people like Doug, and we want to have Doug's company come and do the windows instead of us doing that. So if you don't know a window cleaner, I'm going to recommend that you challenge yourself right now to get online and to find one. Join a Facebook group or whatever, ask all the questions you have, and meet some window cleaners that are in your area so that you can recommend a window cleaner when the customer asks you. It's important for us not only to know what we do, but know what we don't do. And we don't do windows.
Yeah. If you're, and let me add to that. If you're a house cleaning company, to try to develop a relationship with someone who does windows or does power washing or whatever it is that you're being asked for that you don't do. We have a relationship with a power washing company here locally that, they don't do windows. We don't do power washing, but we recommend each other because, our customers ask for that. a good place to do that is your local small business meeting groups, networking groups, BNI, whatever it might be. Most of them will have, they'll only allow one type of business in each group. So that they have a window cleaner, make that the one that you connect with. Develop a relationship with those companies, and then you'll know, it'll be easier for you to recommend them if you know their reputation, you know who they are, you've talked with them, rather than saying, I found this one on Google. So try to develop relationships with companies that do the things you're being asked to do that you're not comfortable with or not ready to do.
I love that. Oh, this is awesome. And our time is up. How did our time disappear so fast? I want to say thanks to everybody that showed up. You guys, it was just awesome to have you here. You made my day being here, and I appreciate all of your comments. And it's great having you here. So thank you. Doug, tell us where our listeners can go to find you, and those that are in the North Carolina, South Carolina, Rock Hill area, where can people go to find you and hire you?
Sure. Well, I mean, Fish is all over the country. We're the largest window cleaning company in the world. We have 275 locations throughout the U.S. My particular territory covers Lancaster and York County in South Carolina. If you want to find us anywhere in the system, just go to fishwindowcleaning.com, type in your zip code, and it'll get you to the right franchisee. If you want to get a hold of us specifically, fishwindowcleaning.com/3248, or our phone number is 803-902-2223.
And I'm going to leave links in the notes below that, just so that you guys have access to that. Thank you so much today for all of the insights and inspiration, and for letting us know why house cleaners don't clean windows.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the questions. I enjoyed it.
This has been awesome. Thanks again.